All right, let's get this thing kicked off. Hey, who's excited to be at LA Comic Con? Excited? Yeah! It's the first panel of the day. Fighting the crowds. Not much traffic, I guess, but
should have been here yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday was a nightmare. It was just like this eternal loop of lines outside. But hey, I know it takes effort to be at anywhere. It's kind of early in the morning, so thank you guys for joining us. Your first panel of the day, and you know, for me, I attended a panel like this years ago, got inspired, it changed my life, and so I've had just the privilege to be able to share a similar panel at a lot of different shows across the nation, and I hope that the moments that we have together will be meaningful to you, and I hope that like myself and probably like this panel here, that you'll be able to make some steps and changes to live your dreams. So let's do this. So let's quickly just introduce ourselves, what we do, and then we'll kind of go into how we did what we're doing. I'll start us off. My name is Tony Kim. My company is called Hero Within. I do geek fashion apparel that's licensed with Marvel, DC, and we just started with Star Trek as well. And so we started about 3 years ago, and my background is not in fashion. It actually is in design, but it's not in fashion at all. So this was like pretty much a whole new industry for me 3 years ago, and I'll share a little bit about how I kind of made that pivot. So, Denise, how about you?
All right, I'll dive in. I want to echo your sentiment about the morning. It's so hard to rally yourself on a weekend without coffee, but I'm trying to take a break from coffee right now. I know.
Did you stop?
I'm trying to cleanse, you know, a little bit. But it's very difficult. So thank you all, everybody. What do? I am a writer. I write novels, sci-fi and fantasy mostly. I also write for video games, which is a blast. I'm diving, headlong into that. And I'm also a script consultant for movies now. So that's been really fun to do in LA as well. So that's me in a quick nutshell. And I'm a mom. I have a 5-year-old. She just turned 5 yesterday. And anybody that's from here that knows about the fires going on in the valley, we had to postpone her birthday. She was super sad, and it was a crazy day for me yesterday. But we're here.
My name is Andres Salazar. I am a creator, writer, artist of a series of graphic novels. I just finished up a series called Pariah, Missouri, and I'm working on a couple of new ones right now. So I make comics. That's my thing.
Yay, comics.
Yeah.
And we had a fourth person who's a cosplayer and makeup artist. She got called away last minute, so unfortunately, her name's Chrissy Lynn. She wanted to join us, but she can't. But that's okay, because it's more of my time for us. So,
Yay.
her anyway. There you go. So, you know, I think when you consider the world of Comic-Con, and I've been going to Comic-Cons for, I don't know, 15 years now or so. You guys probably close to that as well. And it's such a creative place, Comic-Con, and geez, in the past 10 years, I feel like we've experienced such a pop culture revolution with the Marvel films, the DC films, and just everything, you know, all the indie product that's out there, that you can't help but come to a show like this and be inspired, because almost everything you see out on this floor, this incredible floor, all started with someone saying, hey, I want to make something, I want to do something, I want to create something, I want to actually put something out there that means something to other people. But sometimes that path to get there is very weird and strange, and it's not orthodox, and it's just like, it's not traditional, and so everyone's path to get to creating what they're doing is oftentimes very different from each other. And so I know I'd love to talk to you guys about what you did before, and then that moment of like, that moment of truth where you're like, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I need to switch to what I'm currently doing. And so, Andres, I love your story a little bit. What did you do before, and then what was that moment of how you got to today?
So, my story is unusual, but maybe everyone's is unusual. About that.
By the way, nice jacket, by the way.
Yeah, I like this.
Really,
I pre-ordered this online. That was the way to go.
So our company, we made the San Diego Comic-Con 50th anniversary jacket.
Yeah.
So,
it's great. So I was a kid, like us all, and I love comics. I've always wanted to do comics, and I was afraid. Fear stopped me from doing my passion, my dream. So I graduated high school and I went into science. I have a degree in molecular biology, and I did the lab work. Worked for some biotech companies. Science was my job, but I always...
My Asian parents would love you right now.
Yeah. A lot of Asians in biotech.
Yeah, there is.
And, but really it was the fear of doing comics, doing art. I just stopped. So I did the lab for a while. And I had always dabbled, you know, after college, I dabbled trying to be an inker. I submitted things to Marvel DC, but I never really spent that much time. And it's hard work, and there wasn't back then a clear path on how to do it. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't a path, a career path of how do I be an artist.
You couldn't Google either. There was no Google.
There was no Google back then, yeah. So I had to go look at a Wizard magazine.
That's right.
Back then and try to figure it out. So I dabbled in things like that, but I never really grabbed it by the balls, so to speak. And later in life, in my 30s, I said, you know what? I'm miserable. I hate work. I've done this, and unless I go get a PhD, I'm maxed out on what I could do in the lab, right, as a scientist. So I just said to my wife, my new current beautiful wife, said, you know what? We're gonna do something. We gotta do something. And
how long were you in?
I was in biotech for 10 years. And so I decided to say, let's just do this. And using what I had, what meager small tools I had to just figure out how to make comics and just do it. It started off at nights, you know, like most people, you know, a couple hours every night cranking it out and then just banging it out. And so I love what I do. I love what I'm doing now. This is the moment that I love, but we'll talk more.
Yeah, we'll talk more about this.
Let's talk about it too.
But the not so fun part on the other end.
I was right there with you, like that moment. It's crazy. So it's not that unusual. I think creatives have that moment, and it was the same for me. At 12 years old, I really wanted to ride a horse, and my parents were like, "That's the most expensive sport you could pick. There's no way we can afford that. If you want to ride a horse, you've got to get a job and ride the horse." Thankfully, I was homeschooled at the time, so that allowed me to start my first job at 12 years old at a horse barn, cleaning stalls and water tanks, like manual labor we're talking about. I remember in the winter, this was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, like, you know, chopping the ice out of the horse buckets, and it was hard work. But I made enough money to take lessons, and I learned a really valuable skill in horseback riding and dressage and jumping, and I used that to teach horseback riding lessons all through college, because again, I had to pay my own way and take out student loans and hold down a job, and so it was a whirlwind from 12 years old all through college, work, and juggling classes and all of that. And I got into banking. I was a teller. I worked my way up through school while juggling, you know, college classes, all the way into management. I had a almost 5.5, 6-year career, not quite 10 years. But I did have that moment where, you know, I started to be promoted and hiring and firing and training, and every day was exhausting mentally and emotionally for me, handling people's money and the conflict of what happens with all of that. And it was one of my professors, now I'm in Texas at this time, in Austin, and one of my professors at UT, you know, I was taking creative writing for fun, and I was doing, you know, like what they call like proper majors, you know, I was like trying out all these, you know, like medical majors or science majors and all these things. And because of course my parents were like, well, don't go into art or anything like that. You want to do something dependable. But my professor said, hey, you know, you have a knack for dialogue. You should keep writing. There's something there. And it was, you know, those little seeds that are planted, whether you're here at the convention and you're showing your portfolio to a fellow artist, or you're in a class and your professor says something to you, that it's like moments of magic. You've got to kind of harness it and zone in on it and marinate on it like you did, and go, wait a second, something's calling me. And it's so important. There's so many people that say, Janice, I want to be an artist, I want to be a writer. I forgot to tell you guys my name, right? I did. Like, I just realized when I introduced myself. I'm Janice. It's like Denise, but with a G. And they'll say, geez, I want to be an artist, I want to be a writer, but you know, I'm already down a 5, 10, 15-year career. How do you jump the ladder? I mean, it's scary because you're already up here, and if you want to change, you got to start at the bottom. But there's something, if you feel something, like when you're watching the news or when you're at school or at work, and there's this perpetual fire or something that's bothering you, or that you want to change in the world or a genre, there's magic there, and it's like a moment of deciding, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. So I changed my major to English, and I started writing novels, and we'll, I'm sure, go from there.
And for me, very similar as well. I probably spent 15 years in my background's in communication and design, but I spent a number of my years working at a few different design studios as well as nonprofits, and I ended up spending a lot of my time in kind of getting promoted through the ranks in the nonprofit sector. And I did love my work, and that was great. But I've always just felt, ever since I was a little kid, like I just comics and superheroes and pop culture and all that stuff was just in my blood. And I was always drawing, I was always creating, and I was always like painting stuff and models and just everything, all that. And so going to conventions and going to work, doing my day job, but then spending my nights and weekends pursuing my passions. And I kind of reached that point similarly where you just kind of like, I remember I was an executive director at this nonprofit, and I was, it was like we had a few $1 million budget, and I had a couple dozen staff, and I'm just like, my job was just a professional email answer. That's all I was doing, was just answering emails, just all day, just like yes, no, maybe, wait, just like that was just all I was doing. And it was important work, and people who answer emails, it's important work, right? And I mean, I still answer a lot of emails, but the point being is that, you just sort of like, you just look in the mirror and it's like, gosh, man, like I can't imagine spending the rest of my life doing this, as important as work as it is. Like, I feel like I'm missing a major contribution in another part of the universe. And I was going to cons like this, doing panels. I ended up doing a lot of press interviews and being on stage. And I realized that like there really isn't a whole lot when it came to, at that time, a few years back, there wasn't a lot when it came to geek fashion apparel that was beyond your typical like t-shirt or sweatshirt, that sort of thing. So I was like, well, after doing a lot of research, I've always loved fashion, I always loved pop culture. I thought, well, maybe I could step into this sort of open space and create something that kind of met that need. And so I kind of conceived this idea called Hero Within, where we design things like blazers and jackets and dress shirts and dresses and all this sort of stuff that is more commonplace now, but even like 5 years ago, there just wasn't anything out there. So I designed this one blazer and showed it off at San Diego Comic-Con, and it got a great response, and I thought to myself, wow, this would be really cool. Like, I think that this could be a whole business, but and I remember I was telling a colleague that was helping me out, I was like, I really think there's a company here, I think there's an idea, there's a product here, I think that this could really, this could happen. But, I've got like I got the mortgage, I got the kids, and I've got the bills, and like, we were just talking about, we all have kids, and I have 4 kids, and it's like, there's just no way that makes such a dramatic change so late in my life. Because I realized as passionate I am about pop culture and fashion, I'm equally as passionate about things like electricity, like food. I'm very passionate about gasoline. Like, I found very passionate about that stuff. But then just a couple months after that conversation, I got laid off. Right? Just like that. And I was like, curse you, universe! So I was like, wow, I guess this is the time to do that. So the universe just kicked my butt out of the nest, and I had to jump into it, and it's been a crazy ride ever since. But in your own journey of that, what was in your mind at that time of making that switch? What was obviously finance is a big obstacle, but maybe you can speak to that, but maybe beyond that, like what was kind of the biggest hurdle that you felt like that you kind of faced as you were sort of launching your first year? It could be technical, it could be emotional, it could be your support system, whatever it is. But what was that biggest obstacle, and then what did you sort of do to sort of traverse it?
I think in the arts, rejection is a huge one, right? I mean, to think about the horror stories you read about and hear about, and like you were saying, Andres, the fear, right, of the self-doubt is huge. I think to counter that, when, like you were saying, working nights and weekends, you know, I would go to class or if I was at work, I would set aside time to practice my craft every night. Like Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Fridays were my writing nights, and Mondays were my raid nights. Anybody a gamer in here? Okay, yeah. Raiding, you know, is when you get together with a group of people at a certain time every week to play a game. Anyway, we're at Comic-Con, we can geek out about this stuff. And so I have like a rigid schedule I put on myself, and I think that's important, is to create deadlines and accountability for yourself. And I also, after I graduated, took extra classes. So I went back to school and took creative writing and playwriting. And I think it's important to put your best foot forward when you're changing careers, especially in the arts, because you need to find a way to set yourself apart. And you need to find a way to find your voice, so that way you don't say, I want to be a writer, or I want to be a game developer, but you're saying, I want to be a novelist, I want to be a comic creator, I want to be a programmer or a writer for games, or what have you. And then you can continue to narrow that down even more to become specialized in a particular part of that field. And that alone makes you so much more grabbable, I guess, you know, by a company, because if you say, like, here's my portfolio, this is what I've specialized in, these are the classes I've taken, these are the mentors I've hired. So that was something that I did too, is I hired people like Paul Hood, who's a huge writer. He used to work for BioWare, and Christy Golden, she writes World of Warcraft books, and so Star Wars books as well. So I did my research and followed the people that I had looked up to or wanted to emulate as far as writing styles go. And if they were up for hire, I would put my money where my heart was, right? It's so important to invest in what you want, and it's so hard, you guys. I mean, it's literally taking out debt, you know, to try to switch careers. It's you have to harness this inner decision to be like, we're doing this. You have to be all in. But back to rejection, I think that a way to look at it is, the more that you get rejected, the closer you are to working with the right people. So you don't want to work with a publisher, for example, that only publishes YA. If you want to kind of create your own genre, maybe you want to make a YA mixed with thriller and, you know, sci-fi. So that's a big thing. It's kind of figuring out who you are and then running with that.
Sure. I think there's two parts for me. There's the product or craft you're trying to do, and getting the skill set needed to make it, you know, run. And then there's the business side, which is the finance. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those, because that was the first year. I mean, constantly. So this is, I'm talking first year, but I'm talking like today as well. Finance, business. It's figuring. So the first thing was, I'd never done a Comic-Con. I got this book. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm didactic though. I'm talking to people. I'm trying to learn how to submit my application to get a booth. You know, what should I pay? And should I do the big booth for $1,000, or should I do the small table for $400? What? And I made decisions. Some were bad, some were good, and that was hard because I don't have the capital to begin with. So there's that starting capital that is important. So that's the risk, right? Is like, okay, do I burn credit cards like Kevin Smith did for the movie Clerks? Or what do I do? How do I calm my wife into agreeing with this? There's that kind of conversations we're having. Do I use Kickstarter? Those kind of things to help fund these ideas. So just getting like the finances, and okay, I made $600 at the con. Well, you know what? You really should put some of that money to the next con's booth fee. Or, you know, you did pay $1,000 for printing. Maybe you should pay off that instead of just spending that on bills or gas or food. You know, do you really need to stay at the Marriott next to the con, or should you stay at the Motel 6 30 minutes away? All those little like things. So what I'm learning is to be super cheap, you know, and that's like, because I'm a small business myself, I have to learn how to just like cut corners. If you guys thought I paid $25 parking today, no. I parked in the ghetto 4 blocks away. I ain't paying $25 to park here. For free. So there's little things like that, little hacks.
My Asian parents would love.
Yeah, I know. I married an Asian woman.
Oh, there you go.
So,
I knew it. I could tell.
Yeah, I married
So
there's all those like business hacks things that you do just to kind of cut corners to make your profit larger than. And then there's the big part, which is the book for me, right? How am I going to make this book? Do I have the chops? Well, you can go down Artist Alley and you can see people who you'll never be as good as. And you'll see people who you could say, I might be able to pull that off, right? So the range of skill level is very wide here at Con. They'll accept anybody for a table. That's just the way that is, right? Because they just want to sell tables. So you can put your hacky stuff out there. And I didn't want to be the hacky guy. So I had to talk to other professionals. And I went to WonderCon years ago, and I had all these guys look at my pages. I'm like, here's 6 pages, what do you think? And they ripped it to shreds, and they said, this isn't going to work. And I was dejected, but it was good. Because I said, well, I need to find some partners. And I wound up finding other, and I need to change the style, or I'm using reference in this, but I'm not using reference for that, and now it looks wonky, the unreferenced stuff, you know? And so you're just learning the craft. So I would say, my big message today, and I was going to say it later, but I'll say it right now, is learn your craft. That's the most important. Be the best out there that you can be, and just keep banging away. You got to learn, you got to keep working at what you're doing. Because I believe firmly that if you make the best, whatever, people will come. They're going to see it, they're going to know it. But you have to put that hours in, that 10,000 hours or whatever they say. You know, you've got to put the time in, and you always do it.
I keep thinking about the name of this panel, about a brand, and how that's a pretty overwhelming word. Like if you're just starting out, like how do I build a brand? Like that sounds like terrifying, right? And I realized that one of the things that really helped me was, does anybody like TED Talks? I'm such a huge TED Talk person. I love this so much. I watch one almost every day for lunch. It's like, because I can't just take a lunch break because I feel guilty. I'm like, I need to be doing something. So I'm like watching TED and like learning. And this TED Talk by Simon Sinek, he's my favorite because he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that's how you build your brand. You focus in on why do you want to write this book, or why do you want to build this apparel, you know, or comic. And I swear, you guys, that brand, if you have it down, you become. It's like Christy Golden. She told me, she said, you know, your positivity and you're very easy to collaborate with, and you're the first author I've ever worked with that didn't defend. I didn't defend my work. I didn't try to say, but I wrote that because, or I don't want to cut that because. I was very amiable to constructive criticism, and that became my brand, right? I became known as this writer that was very on time, very enthusiastic, very positive, very easy to work with. And the industry is much smaller than you think it is, and your reputation, your brand, it spreads. Like it's so important to know your industry. If you want to work in games, to know the pipeline of games. Even if you want to be an artist or an engineer, a writer, or a lighter, or rigger, or animator, you have to know all the other parts when they come into play so that you can work with these people. You're going to be working with all these different designers. I'm writing for a company in Brussels right now, and they brought in a level designer to talk to me, the writer. So we're on Skype talking about what she needs and what I can provide. And so if I didn't know what she did, it would be really difficult for us to exchange on where the challenges are for the budget and the scope of the game. And then, you know, working with movie companies is the same way. You have to listen. A lot of movie companies are hiring novelists now to expand their property and things like that, so that's really exciting. But at the same time, you got to understand the movie industry and what they want and how they want their vision to incorporate into the books. So I'm a big proponent of that positivity and that saying yes and being amiable. Although there are times that knowing your brand, knowing your core will intrinsically lead you having to say no. And I know we've been talking a lot about saying yes, but there are moments where you'll have to make really difficult decisions. I know there was a big one for me that I thought was career suicide that ended up helping. And I'll share it with you guys real quickly. It was when I was writing Holder's Dominion, actually. This was way back in 2010. This was before Wonder Woman was on the big screen. This was before women heroes had the voice that it has today. And I wrote about a woman going head to head with a hacker. All about video games, you know, online games, anybody that plays Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft or what have you. And I remember shopping it around and getting a lucrative book deal offer for it, and I was so excited because, you know, this is your in. You got the publisher.
The moment you've ever dreamed of.
It's like, oh my gosh, after all the rejection and all this, and you're shaking and you're so excited. And they said, okay, we love it, we love the tech, we love the video game, it's trending, the gamers are gonna love this. And they're like, but we just have one thing we want you to change. Could you change Kaylee to Ken? It was like that, right? It was like
they didn't want a female protagonist.
That's right. And so I politely, I asked, I was like, oh, what's the thought behind that and all that? And like, well, most gamers are male. Most video game industry is male dominated. It just doesn't really feel right or make sense that a woman could do that and kind of go head to head and kind of match this pro gamer. Wow. And it was like a knife to a heart. And the thing is that I thought, I thought about it. I was like, okay, I could change this. Yeah, I could change her, and I had to go back to, why does this not feel right? Like, why am I hesitating instead of just going, yes, just give me the deal, right? What is it that's stopping me? And so through my shakes and all of that, I realized that Simon Sinek and my why was I wanted to write about a woman in tech, because I was a woman playing these games with all my rating friends were male, and they would rib me for it was like all of this came crashing down to the whole reason I wrote this book was not only to heal personally from trauma or things that I had gone through, but to spotlight a part of my life that in real life people would say, well, what's a raid? What's an MMO? What's a tank? What's DPS? What's a healer? And so it was like, wait a second, if I don't stick to my why, why did I? So it was the hardest thing that I have done, besides labor, to say no. And I did say no, and I was terrified that I was doing the wrong thing. But what's crazy is that saying no, declining that, going with a different publisher, going with a Chicago publisher, going the smaller route, smaller business idea, I ended up being on a panel a year later about women heroes. How do you write a woman hero in a unique setting? And it was on that panel where I met a fellow panelist that introduced me to Stan Lee, and now I'm writing for the late Stan Lee's property, his last intellectual property, called Project Nitron. So me saying no ended up getting me a job with an amazing icon of the industry. So there's a time to say no as well.
Right, yeah. That's awesome.
It was emotional.
Yeah. No, we all feel that crazy deep sense of pain and excitement and loss and enthusiasm, and to be an entrepreneur is just such a roller coaster ride in this experience. I tell people the first year that every day I woke up thinking to myself, this is never going to work. This is the worst mistake of my life. And then by the end of the day, I'm like, oh, it actually worked. And then the next day it started all over again. And so, and then year 2, it's like every other day. So year 3, it's like every third day. So, but for me, my biggest thing, and this is for anyone who's into merchandising, I do clothing, but it could be toys, statues, art, whatever it is. For me, the biggest thing was just, in order to sell anything, you have to have inventory of some sort, and that takes a lot of money. It's a lot of capital to have inventory And in order to have inventory, you have to really master the whole production line. So in clothing, that's the hardest part, is that anyone can come up with a great idea, clothing idea, jacket, shirt, dress, whatever. But if you need to make 1,000 of them that are all exactly the same, that's ethically sourced, that delivers on time, that's made quality, all that sort of stuff, that stuff's really hard. The production pipeline is really difficult. So how do you get enough money to do that and all that? Fortunately, I had some good friends in the industry that really helped kind of bring them to speed. But 3 years ago, I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and all I had was, I didn't have a booth, I didn't have a table, I didn't have anything, but literally a handful of samples. That's all I had. And I was just hustling it. Anyone who would listen to me. I literally was like a madman on the street corner, like holding up clothes. I look like an idiot. But I was just talking to, creators and talking to studios, going to panels, just like literally just anywhere I could, just hustling it, just anyone who would listen. And there was a panel like this on Geek Fashion, and I literally, like 2 weeks before, I contacted the person that was moderating and said, hey, I was in your panel last year and really got inspired, started this company, and if you would, I would love to, if you had the space, squeeze me in on a corner to just be able to share, hey, I was in the audience last year and we started launching this company as a result, if you would have me. She said, yeah, that sounds like a perfect idea. So I was on this panel with like Hot Topic and Her Universe and several like Think Geek, all these big companies, and then there's just me on the end. And what was so incredible is that I knew I didn't have the inventory yet. I didn't have I didn't have anything besides, I just focused on, like you said, just making a really good product. I just made sure that my samples were just like the very best they could possibly be, even though there was just like one of each, right? And from that panel, like another Think Geek was on that panel, said, hey, we've been looking for this exact product. And I walked away from that panel with a $100,000 deal. Wow. Just like that. They just like wrote me a check and placed an order, and I was off and running. And so I had no right to be on that panel. I had no rights. I had nothing, right? It literally would just be just hustling it and just giving an opportunity for the universe to sort of respond, from it. And that really just launched it, because I was able to create a product and then move forward from that point on. So let's move quickly into, for you, what was the biggest, we talked about the obstacles and hurdles, but what was the biggest thing that sort of like propelled you moving forward? Like whether it was a tool, a resource, a technology, social media, like what was the thing that kind of helped sort of get you sort of going in this? There's nowadays in this industry, in any industry, you don't have 5-10 years to figure it out. Like you really have to move at sort of a light speed pace. And so what sort of helpful thing that kind of helped get you going?
I want to add on to not only hiring, investing in myself and hiring, even though I didn't have the money, you put it on the credit card or you take out the loan, hiring, mentors like Christy Golden Paul's were huge. But beyond that, like a really tangible, easy to jumpstart yourself routine is to, you don't necessarily have to hire someone if you know someone who has the skill set, but having a producer, and I know that's kind of a video game term to use, but it really works for novels or any kind of writing or any kind of art really. Having someone that holds you accountable, that you meet with every 2 weeks, was a huge secret, I think, for me, that I didn't realize at the time was a secret. But when I tell people about it, they're like, oh wow, that's a really good idea, I didn't think about that. But what I did was I had a producer that we would meet every 2 weeks, and we would have a brainstorming one-on-one, and then the next 2 weeks we would have a logistics one-on-one. And what we would do for the brainstorming, if anybody's familiar with Pixar, they have these blue sky ideas where they talk about the story or the comic or the art piece or whatever they're working on, and they blue sky ideas about where it needs to go or where it's at, where they're stuck, where they're excelling, and they can get a whiteboard out, and you have this whole blue sky session where you're making sure that your plot, is moving forward, your characters are evolving at what point, and it's like a very technical but freedom feeling session, and it's amazing because someone saying something out loud, and even you describing your characters out loud or your plot, you'll fix things on the fly. You'll be like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And it helps just speaking out loud with someone instead of like marinating it internally all the time and feeling frustrated, like you're just stuck. And then something that they say will be like a light bulb. You're like, oh my gosh, that totally fixes this or helps with this. And then the logistics one-on-one is like the word count and how much have you gotten done and how's that chapter going, and like an accountability session. And it might sound, I don't know, kind of goofy, but it really isn't. It's like there's magic in accountability. Like I said before, there's this magic where as soon as you're meeting with someone on Tuesday at 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock, you don't want to be embarrassed. Like you don't want to meet up and not have anything done, right? So it's like this huge motivator where you're like, I'm meeting with him or her at this time. And it's such a good routine. So don't be afraid to open up your idea. Like Tony, I mean, he was out there talking to anybody who would listen. So don't be afraid to be like, okay, I need to find a person that I jive with and open yourself up. Don't be worried about copyright and stealing ideas and all of that stuff, because that comes up every panel where someone's like, I have this movie idea or I have this idea, but I'm afraid of it getting stolen. The thing is, no one can write it like you. Even if you want to write a Lord of the Rings-esque thing or a Star Wars thing, it's going to be different because it's yours. You can't worry about sounding too much like something or it being stolen, because even if someone liked your idea, they wouldn't be able to rip it off the way you are, because it's you. It's your take on it.
I echo your sentiments about collaboration, because collaborating is key. For me, what helped me in the beginning was really testing the market with crowdfunding. So I did crowdfund.
Through which platform?
Yeah, I used Kickstarter. This was in 2013. I did a Kickstarter, and this was just to see, hey, is this gonna work? Like, do I have the chops to make a book that people would respond to?
Has anyone here bought a Kickstarter before or invested in Kickstarter?
Yeah.
So most of us.
Yeah. So I did a Kickstarter 6 years ago, and that told me right away, instantly, okay, what level am I at? You know, as far as what's the audience with what I'm giving. That was a great barometer, because then I knew, okay, I got some confidence. And there's a million Kickstarter panels and books, and so we won't even go into all that business, but it's crazy and it's insane. And it's wonderful and it's horrible, all in 30 days. So I've done a number of them, and I'm kind of like, I think I'm out of the Kickstarter game because it's just emotional and kills me. But it was a great way to just say, okay, I got something here, people like it, let's make these mofos and let's sell them. And so that was like the great, there was no way for me to do it otherwise. I wasn't going to be able to get a dining right away. I wasn't going to be able to go hawk my books as, brick and mortar comic shops. I had to see just in the world, where am I, right? And the response was great. And that was the beginning of the brand, right? That was the beginning of your audience. What is your message? Finding what your message is. What is your kind of tone of voice or of story that you're giving, and building those connections. Because if you can get your fan base, if you can get your base to follow you and love you and continue, then you're set. You're golden, right? So it's that was a really way to say, okay, I now have a core audience. And these, if it's 50 people or if it's 5,000 people, now I know that in theory, if they like this book, they might like the next, and then continue, right? And I can keep these guys as my premier folks that love me and I love them. And so that was just so awesome to have that relationship, because even though it's online, you do kind of build a community. And that's, I think, a big part of branding, right? Is building the community, and then you use all the new tools online to kind of keep that community going.
Yeah, so definitely just to tag on to that one. I mean, the biggest helpful thing for us was social media. I mean, same sort of thing that I think when you talk about writing a book or creating a property or a piece of merchandise, it's overwhelming to think that, how do I even get this out to how do I reach the world with this? It's very intimidating. But you don't need to reach the world, you just need to reach 1,000 people. If you just can effectively reach 1,000 people and have them be your best evangelist, then it just makes it so much more easier. And so when you think about, if you break it down to bite-sized chunks and just go, how can I effectively connect with 1,000 people? Social media is a really easy, very effective way of doing that. And so, especially for us that actually we do products, like Instagram was really huge. And it was just as simple as, we started an account, and then we, because we started out with DC and with Marvel and sort of that whole geekosphere, we connected with some influencers on social media, Instagram, that were big into Marvel and DC. So you just contact them and say, hey, I'll pay you $100, and if you post our product on your page for 24 hours. And some do 50, some do 100, so it's just all in that range. And so you put that up there, and then they post it, and you get their followers will follow you as well as buy your product. But just something simple as that, you start gaining followers and followers, and pretty soon you have 1,000 followers on Instagram, and now you got 10,000, and so on and so on. And so just that idea of just, identify a group and really invest into that fan base, develop that relationship, and that just sort of like gets the ball going. So,
if I could add to that too, I would say when reaching out to companies, authors, comic creators, when reaching out in general, there's a fine line, right, of how your impression comes across, and that's really, really important to think about, because we've been in the same boat, right? And it's like, okay, we get emails like, hey, could you, read my sample, or could you help me with this, and we want to say yes to every single thing. I mean, I feel so guilty, right, when I can't read someone's manuscript or do this because I'm overwhelmed with time. But the people that stand out are the people that don't start with an ask. They start with how they found me, or how they found, or what the company means to you. Like when you reached out to Marvel and DC, it wasn't just, hey, I've got a product and he asked, right? It's more, I have done my research, I have done this, I have done that, I realized that I could help your business, or I could be a partner, like with the table thing, right? So the people that I will never forget are the people that like, hey, I bought this book, I played this game, I saw that you were a writer on the credits, I appreciated how you did this, or how you created this plotline, or this character. This character changed something in my relationship with my grandfather or my sister. Like, they started with how they found me, how they invested in spending some of their personal or financial support, right? Instead of just like, hey, I know you don't know me, but could you read that, 400-page manuscript? Like, right? Like, see the difference, right? Of like how that means to someone, that you took the time to buy their book or their comic, or post, hey, I got this jacket, from Here Within, and it's da-da-da-da. Like, it makes a huge difference. There was a casting director who was on one of a panel with me at San Diego, I think, San Diego Comic-Con. And she said, there's so many times where people come up to me and say, I just need my big break. Like, I want to be an actor so badly. Can you please just, I can't get into, SAG, because you have to be in a credit to get a credit. And there's this whole, like, how do I break in? And she'll say, okay, what have you done? Like, tell me about, where did you study? Oh, well, what do you mean study? Well, where did you, study theater or film? And the answer is like, oh, well, I mean, and they're not ready, or they don't have their portfolio, or they haven't invested. And she goes, okay, what type of films do you want to be in? Oh, I want to be an action, Jason Bourne, lead character. She is a horror casting director, so they didn't even take the time to research what she casts. So she's so insulted, right? She's like, you're coming to me just asking me to put you in something. You didn't even take the time to see what my credits were. So
yeah. Ultimately, no one's going to hire you, partner with you, invest in you for what you're going to do. You have to already be doing it in some way, shape, or form. And it might not be perfectly polished. It might not be, but because everyone has a studio in their palm of their hand, basically, you can make something, and it may not resonate with 99% of people, but that 1% is still a lot of people. So you just need to be doing the work. So, but let's do this. We only have like 5 minutes left. We'd love to. Does anyone have any questions, or just sort of something that personally resonated with you that we'd love to at least spend a couple minutes answering anything that we can do to make this helpful? Anyone? Yeah, go ahead. Speak up so everyone can hear.
Oh yeah, definitely. So I've come to realize just at this Comic-Con actually that I really wanted to kind of get into voice acting.
Oh, right.
So just coming here and hearing you guys talk about, although it's completely, it's not completely different, but it's different from just voice acting or anything. Just hearing you guys talk about how you put yourself out there, how you start branding yourself, basically. It's just kind of cemented everything I've been hearing and stuff. It's like, okay, so basically, be true to yourself. Be honest with yourself, and when you're looking to actually get out there and do stuff, just go out there and do stuff that you like. Because at the end of the day, that genuineness is the thing that gets people wanting to work with you. And it was more of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. I can't wait to hear more of your work in the future. So. Way back, yeah. Thank you.
For each of you, what is the most efficient thing that you outsource that you could do yourself but you don't because your time is better used somewhere else?
For me, it's really easy. It'd be a lot of people package ship their own stuff and send, like early on. If you have a garage, you have full merchandise, and you just ship it. And a lot of people do that for big and small things, right? And so there's a lot of warehouses out there that can do all that for you and for relatively inexpensive. So for me, it's just finding a facility that can just store my stuff, and as soon as we get orders, they just fulfill them. So that's easy.
I'm not at the point where I can outsource anything yet, but instead I have to prioritize, and things fall through the cracks. Like, you know, my fans will be like, "Why don't you post more on social media?" Like, I just something just has to, you know. Yeah. So like, I would like to someday be able to afford like a whole social media team and outsource that whole thing. But
if I was going to be lavish with our budget, I think the outsourcing social would probably be blogging, social, all that stuff. Yeah.
I don't outsource anything. I can't think of anything. I'm doing it all. It sucks. I would love a team.
Parking his car that he's out. Park it far away. Drop him off and park it far away. Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insights. I guess one thing, other than fear, kind of something that I struggle with is I don't like when people don't like me, and I'm sure that that's a struggle too. Like, not everybody's gonna like your work, and some folks might not be like the most amicable when they give you the feedback, right? So it's like, how do you handle like an uncomfortable situation? I know you mentioned, somebody wanting to completely spin your main character to a male, and that would like really hurt also. So I guess like how to be professional in a place that could, there's drama too. I'm sure there's drama in these small circles. So I just want to make sure, like, how do you navigate that?
So for me, I have to say, not everyone's going to like my stuff. I've got to be okay with that. And you're going to have to, they say, grow thick skin. I have to, it's very hard because I'm an emotional, passionate person. Most creators probably are. I have to literally separate out the emotion from what's going on, right, in the business. And if people get something, I'm selling books today, right? If I don't make a certain number in my head, I'll get bummed out. In my drive home, I'll be sad. I got to stop that. I got to just separate out. There's things that you control, which is your craft and what you do and how good it is, and then there's everything else that you have no control over. This sounds like an NA meeting, but it's like, but basically you have to be able to let that go and say, look, if people don't like it, that's okay. Either I need to get better, or I need to find the people who will like it, right? Because there are people out there that will like it. You have to just find those people, what the demographic is, and get those people. But at the end of the day, it is emotional and it is hard, and you have to just let it go and just be okay with it, and just that's because I'm always rejected constantly. I still have the rejections from Marvel and DC. I keep those, and it's like a badge. It's like, you know what? Fine. Now I'm mad. You got me mad about it. So now I'm going to be better. You know what I mean? And it's propelling me to be better.
And also, like you said, it's subjective. So in the arts, everyone's going to have a different opinion on the movie they watched or the book they read. But there are gems in the conflict or in the bad reviews where it could spur another idea for another property. And I realize I do outsource something. I realize that I outsource that. Like, I let my husband I do not touch like reviews and comments, and he sorts them all for me, and he'll read me the good ones, and then he'll read me the bad ones that will help, right? Like you were saying, if you need to improve somewhere, or if something could have been better with the plot, he'll be like, okay, he'll read it to me in like a babyish way, or I'm like, oh, okay, thank you, that's a good critique. So there we go.
The four most important words to you and for anyone in here is it's not for you. Just know that it's okay, and so much freedom to be able to say to someone else, it's not for you. It's okay. It's not for you. And so your job is to find the smallest, most viable audience that can support what you're doing. If there's not a small, viable audience, then you don't need to be doing it. You're not going to make it. But if there's a small, viable audience and you can support, fan, and grow it to a bigger audience, then that's what you need to pursue. And so that's not for everybody. So the great dream we have is just tell people, hey, it's just not for you. It's okay, and you just get used to it after a while. I mean, I've gotten so many, it's unbelievable how many no's that I've gotten. But you just sort of get used to it, and the best part is it directs you to where you need to go. Yeah. So we have time for one more question, then we'll be done. So go ahead.
Since you use other people's trademark, copyrighted stuff, how do you go about getting those rights or paying for it when you initially start?
I steal them all. Real quickly, everyone's route to licensing is different. It's kind of like dating and marriage. Like, you just sort of like some people, you know someone, you whatever, so you get noticed, something like that. So I was a prolific blogger before this, and so I was blogging all about cons and conventions. And so the person that we contacted with Warner Brothers was familiar with my work, and so they always want to partner with influencers. That always makes it a lot easier if they already know you. So that got our foot in the door, and then when we presented our stuff, it really resonated with them, and so they gave us a Warner Brothers license. So that kind of got us off and running. And then we were at a show, and I always told my team, we're not going to call Marvel. They're just, if you call them, it's just going to be that much harder to get in. So we were at a show like this, and someone from Marvel came by and saw all this stuff and said, hey, we'd love to work with you. I hear that a million times. Every show I always, we'd love to work with you, and then never hear from them again. And then it was at New York Comic Con 2 years ago. And someone contacted us from Marvel on the following Monday to come into our office. We want to work with you, and so on and so on. So again, it's totally two different, completely different situations. And you just, the same thing we've already said, is just when preparation meets opportunity, you just have to be ready for it, and then just improve.
And does the licensing cost depend on the product?
Yeah. The bigger the license, the more money it costs, and so again, whole sliding scale. And if you want to talk about it afterwards, but licensing is a nightmare. Okay, it's the nightmare. It's not for the faint at heart, because it's I have to pay out like a 5-digit check in the next month. Just it's tough to see that stuff happen, but you just sort of have to do those sort of things. So it's not for everybody, but it's different for.
And you gotta stay in touch with this industry, entertainment, movies, games, comics, apparel. You have to face-to-face interaction is gold. Any of you that are building a brand, you come up afterwards, you get business cards, you stay in touch, because we know somebody that knows somebody that could launch you. It's just, that is the way it is.
So we'll close with the last thing you want to say to this audience, and then where to find you. And so last thing.
Andy Salazar, I'm in B17. Go check out the comics and we can chat more. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid.
Janice Davis, it's Genese. That's my website, my Twitter, my Facebook, and all of that good stuff. I've got business cards up here to stay in touch. And we gave you all the gems. Be positive, amiable, know your craft, hone your craft. Come up, we'll talk. I know you have a question. Come up and we'll talk.
Again, here within our booth is almost right here, but it's all the way to the back wall, 1355. I've got some cards for you guys, but I'd love to show you our clothes. And all I have to say is that don't wait for, you get a million times people saying, I want to work for DC and Marvel, some big whatever. Don't wait for that. Just make your stuff, make your craft, make it awesome, and then if it's something of value, someone will notice it. So, hey, thanks for having us. Have a great Comic-Con. Grab a card. Visit these folks.